Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, July 27th, 2026. So we started this episode where we left off very climatically on Friday with Nina rolling Drew into the lake. And so Nina rolls him into the lake and then she stands and watches him sink. And she's looking to see if he resurfaces. However, he never does. So, she does the act of, calling for Drew, which never makes sense to me because, like, you sit there, you're watching somebody fall to their death, and then you scream their name. And especially for, like, Drew, you screaming his name don't do anything because he's supposed to be paralyzed. Like, it ain't like he gonna swim to the top. So she looks around to make sure that, well, she grabs her phone and she's about to call the paramedics, and then she stops and thinks. And then she looks around to make sure that no one else is around. And then she grabs her bag and she leaves. She ends up leaving and going to the WSB to Jack, who has now obtained the black box and its contents in order to help Nina and Willow. So she goes in and she tells him what she did and, how she was going crazy and, she was unlocking his wheelchair to take him back to Willow's house. And he spoke to her and she just freaked out. In doing so, she pushed him in the water. And Jack is like, oh, I wish you would have waited a few more minutes. She was like, well, how was I to know that you were going to get the evidence back? Like, I didn't know. Like, the exchange of the evidence and her pushing them in the water could have happened simultaneously for all she knows. She's like, I didn't know. Meanwhile, Jack and Valentine, they were at the WSB with Jocelyn. And, he was telling him how he acquired the box. And Jocelyn's like, hey, they already gave you your freedom. Are you sure you want to kind of like poke the bear and ask for your money back too? And he's like, absolutely. And so he's like, I have the black box and I'll give it to you. And then he was like, because I'm sure you don't want all this information that's in the black box to come out. And he was like, I think something can be arranged. Something else other than what what Nina needs is in that black box. And Jack doesn't want it to see the light of day. So then we have um Jack, he agrees and he tells when because he goes out to the car because he had the black box in the car. He goes out to the car, brings the box in, and Brennan was like, "Well, provided everything is still here and not tampered with, um, yeah, I'll release your funds. Josh, go ahead and take them with you and start the paperwork to unfreeze his accounts or whatever." So Josh and Valentine go and do that. And so then, meanwhile, Britt is at the hospital, and as we know on Friday, she runs into Jason and she slaps Jason. She slaps Jason because she already on thin ice at work and she can't really just like leave to go have a conversation with Jason. So she slaps him in order to go into an exam room and talk with him. Britt don't be making sense and she get on my nerves. So they go in there and they're talking, and he tells her basically that he's been back for about 2 weeks, but he went away with Jason, and with Danny, and she's like, well, why didn't you tell me? She said, I understand you needed to be with your son, but why didn't you tell me? And he's talking, and she tells him, that she doesn't have Huntington's, and then he asked about her brother, who she knew was her brother all along. But Jason does not know that. And she left that out. And so when a nurse comes into the room to get her because a baby is about to be born, um, a baby is about to be born, she takes that excuse to run with it because, of course, she's not going to tell Jason the truth that she knew all along that her brother was, well, he was her brother, but he wasn't Nathan. But anyway, then we have, then we have, um, sorry, my notes. Then we have Ethan and Ava. They're at the Metro Court pool, and he's trying to see what she told Brooklyn when she recently visited um the Quartermain estate, because he knows via Tracy that she did do so. And so she tells him that she didn't tell him anything, and she's like trying to get him to tell her who this dangerous man that is Phoebe's father. And he was like, it's best for all concerned if she don't know. But she tells him ultimately that she's not going to tell because seeing Brooklyn with Phoebe, she knows how that, she wouldn't want to mess that up. So then he asked her to stay because he liked kicking it with Ava. It's weird. Meanwhile, Geo is at home singing to Phoebe, and then he has a conversation with um his mother, and he's like he's moving back out tomorrow to go back to Sunny's. And she was like, well, you can come over here anytime. I know you like to go out in the lake every day. You might want to get one last swim in. So he goes out to the lake, and by the time he goes to the lake, Nina is gone already, and he's about to jump into the lake, and he sees something in the water. So he jumps into the water after it. Meanwhile, Brennan and Nina come back to the boathouse, and they're looking over the water, and they still don't see that Drew has surfaced. And so Nina is a bit frantic, but then here comes Geo around the corner, and he's like, y'all looking for Drew? And he was like, they were like, yeah. And they were like, oh, yeah, I went into the water and I got him out. And they were like, oh my God, he's dead. And he was like, no, he's fine. Oh, is he fine? Meanwhile, Molly and Dante are at the PCPD, and they're talking about how Ezra implicated some type of relationship between Sidwell and Willow, but they don't really know what it is. So they're bringing her in to have a talk about it. So Chase brings her in. Willow tries to get Chase to not bring her in, tell them that they couldn't, that he couldn't find her, but he tells her that, I can't lie or whatever, and he brings her in. So they're asking her questions about her relationship with Sidwell and why they would be meeting at her home, because I don't care what she says, that's weird, but she's trying to be evasive or whatever. And then she gets mad and she has words with Dante and Molly, and then she leaves. So she leaves, she goes home. She's on the phone with Liesl, telling her that she'll be there to pick up the kids soon. And so she's packing up their stuffed animals, grabbing her tablet. Like, girl, you're going to be a fugitive. You don't need that tablet. I'm just saying. But I digress. So she's packing up the stuff, and she notices a wet footprint on her floor. She's looking at the footprint on the floor, and the door slams behind her. And in comes Drew, soaking wet, dripping, looking like he could kill her with his very bare hands. When GH is firing on all cylinders, they're firing on all cylinders, and they were firing today. I'm excited for tomorrow in this conversation between Drew and Willow. But yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, July 28th, 2026. Okay, so this episode was so freaking good to me. I don't know if it was good to y'all, but it was amazing. So we start this episode where we left off yesterday because we saw Willow was kneeling on the ground because she saw a wet footprint. And so she is, we pick up there and she's looking at the footprint. And as we saw yesterday, Drew comes in and he slams the door or whatever. And so they get into it immediately because Drew is like, honey, I'm home. And, he's ready to get into the fact that, she had him locked up for all those months, and then so she was trying to talk to him, trying to be like, okay, Drew, like Drew, calm down. Let's talk about this. Let's be reasonable and rational. Girl, nothing that you did to him was reasonable or rational. Like you tried to shoot him at close range 2 times. Not tried, excuse me. She didn't try to shoot him 2 times in close range. She did shoot him 2 times at close range. So like, girl, we beyond talking at this point. And so Drew is like going off, and she was trying to talk, and he was like, nah, I heard you talk and all I could do was sit there and blink for all that long time. Now it's my turn to talk and you can blink all you want to. I was like, Drew. Now let me tell you, before Drew got stabbed in the neck by the needle, I was sick of him. Like I was tired of him. Like I was like, Drew, can you just go away already? Because I'm done with you and this foolishness that you had going on. Because he was blackmailing my baby, and he was just going crazy, and I was tired, yo. I was tired. And so then, Willow started talking, and now I've been tired of her because she do be talking to him. He be sitting in that chair, and she just be going on and on and on. And I be like, dang, I know Drew tired because I'm tired. And he can't even like interject and talk over her. So I know he tired. And so he was just going off. But today I was just glad to see that he was able to say everything that he was probably sitting in that chair thinking every time she was sitting up there talking to him. And he was like, I just wanted you to know how stupid you sounded. She did sound stupid, Drew. You not wrong. Drew, you not wrong. I can't say he was wrong. So then, meanwhile, across town, Sonny is dropping Donna off, and he is being Sonny, and he's asking her, "Is her boyfriend up in the attic?" I.e., Valentine or whatever. And she's like, "Sonny, you don't get to ask me that." But before she could go in full fledged on her rant, in comes Jason in her back door. She's hugging him, and he hugs Sonny, and they talk about how Danny was doing when he was gone, and um how Danny was doing while he was gone. And Carly's like, it was hard, he was struggling, and he was like, he tells them that's why he felt it necessary to take Danny and go on the trip with him. And then they start talking about how he was covering for Rocco, and Sonny was of course gracious, grateful for him doing that for his grandson. And so they're talking about that, and then they talk about then Sonny, being Sonny, trying to bring up the fact that Carly is now with Valentine and that Valentine is free, but Carly kind of like shut down the conversation because she doesn't want to get into that right now. But you can't avoid it forever because it's going to come out. Like, everyone pretty much knows that you and Valentine are an item. So I don't know why you trying to hide it now. Don't be quiet now, Caroline. But yeah. Meanwhile, Isaiah is at Portia's house, and he is, talking to the baby or whatever, and Portia comes downstairs, and Portia was supposed to have been getting some rest, but she says she can't rest now, and so she takes the baby and she's telling him, that she want to try and put the baby down in his crib because she wants the baby to be able to sleep in the crib and not being held all the time because, if you know about having babies, we don't want to um it, about babies, you don't want to spoil them too much. So um she's being cognizant of that. So she's like, she's gonna take the baby upstairs and change him and put him down. And when she goes upstairs to put him down, Isaiah's sitting on the sofa and there's a knock at her door. And so he is like, I knew Curtis couldn't stay away. First of all, Curtis and Portia have an agreement that he can come to the house. He just has to let her know in advance. And I don't really see, because I don't see Curtis trying to press his luck because he knows he's kind of in a precarious situation right now. So he can't really piss Portia off. He's not in a predicament where he can push, piss her off. So he goes to the door ready to start stuff. And he opens the door and it's not Curtis. It's actually Marshall. Marshall has come from the airport directly to Portia's house because he wants to meet his grandson. So, they're down there talking, and Portia comes back downstairs, and they have like the sweetest reunion. I was just like, oh, and she tells, him how much she misses him. Now, I don't F with Marshall anymore because at Christmas time, the things that he said about Portia, I'm not feeling him at all. But at one point, they did really have a beautiful relationship, father and daughter-in-law, and it was beautiful. And they were very close, even when her and Curtis were at odds. So it was good. It was just a good reunion. And so, then she, brings the baby back down so that he can meet his grandfather. And Marshall is just talking about how much he reminds him of Curtis when Curtis was a baby, and how, he's going to make sure that he's around unlike he was when Curtis was little. And it's just so heartwarming. And Portia's heart is touched as well. And so when Marshall is leaving, she she tells him, things aren't too good with me and Curtis right now. And um he was like, well, after the trial, we can, you know, look into trying to fix this. And she was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen after the trial, because after the trial comes the civil suit. But that is if the trial goes the way everybody thinks the trial is going. But anyway, then we have Trina, Joss, and Emma. They're down at the pool, and um, you know, Joss is, post work, and she's saying she got a job, and then Emma goes off because she knows the toll that the WSB takes on its agents, because she's seen this firsthand with her grandmother. And so she's not okay with Jocelyn being in the WSB, and she's trying to get Trina to speak up. But Trina's like, look, this her business. Like, she grown, we all get to pick the jobs that we want to do. Like, no one gets to tell us, because if she wanted to go be a stripper, that's her prerogative. That's what she gets to do. So, Trina's like, I can't really say anything about that or whatnot. Then we got Nina, Jack, and Geo. They're down at the Quartermain boathouse, and they're like, where is Drew? And he was like, well, I took him home. So they're calling Willow frantically, and Willow's not answering the phone. So they go over there, which is good, because her and Drew was about to get with it, because she was like, you just been sitting in the chair, you might not have the strength to go toe to toe with me. He said, you want to bet? And they was about to go at it, Mr. and Mrs. Smith style. But then Jack and them came, and they kind of came to an agreement that they're going to end the marriage, and nobody goes to jail or whatever. However, this ain't over for Drew. I know he's still coming for Willow's head. And then the stupid teens, the Rocco, Danny, Charlotte, and Scout, they're at the Quartermains and being stupid. But yeah, that was General Hospital for today. It was so good. So, so good. See you tomorrow. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, July 29th, 2026. So we start this episode at the Q's. We have everybody there. It's Michael, Jason, Ned, Olivia, Tracy, Jason. I said Jason already. His son. It's a bunch of the Q's there, and they're standing and they're welcoming Jason home, and Olivia's like, oh my goodness, you should let me know you were coming. I could have made a full spread. And he was like, yeah, it was late. And she was like, okay, we'll do it today, and everybody's all happy to have Jason back. My friend said Jason went from wearing t-shirts to button-ups. I was weak. But anyway, so they're talking, and Gio comes in and they start talking about how Drew is up and walking. Hell on wheels, child. They're talking about how Drew is up and walking, and Tracy goes. He not welcome on the Quartermain property. Like, it was fine for him to come on the property when he was strapped to a wheelchair, but he can't. No, because he's done too much. He's done too much to everybody in that house. Like, he terrorized them. He tried to steal the house from under them. It's just like, it's too much. And Tracy was like, no. And then even Jason was like, yeah, Tracy is right. I would say, I would agree. He was siding with Tracy. Like, hell was freezing over. So anyway, Danny was back there. He wasn't saying anything. And so she was like, well, Danny, what do you think? Because we all know that Tracy has a soft spot where those children are concerned. And she noticed that Danny wasn't saying anything, and she wants to. And she said, you're just as important a member of the family as anyone else. I want to hear what you think. And he was like, I don't think it's a good idea, because Drew is not going to take well to being excluded. Then Scout isn't going to be able to come over here and all of this, which is actually true. And so when he's saying all of this, Tracy acquiesces begrudgingly, and she's like, look, if he can only come when he's here with Scout, and she got to keep him on a tight leash, which that's impossible, but I digress. So she agrees, and Jason whispers thank you to her, because she has I ain't even gonna lie, she has a soft spot for the kids, but she also has a soft spot for the children, and she has a soft spot for Jason as well. But anyway, so then we have Ava and Ethan, and apparently they got drunk at the Metro Court pool, and then they ended up in a room at the Metro Court. And she's like, yeah, why did you sleep with me? If you trying to sleep with me to buy my silence, I wasn't going back on my word. And he's like, if I thought that you was gonna go back on your word, then I would have never slept with you. And so he also says that he doesn't want Sonny to know that he slept. Well, Sonny don't care if you mess with that particular baby mama. He don't really care about her. But yeah, he said he didn't want Sonny to know about what they did or whatever. And now Ava looking like, oh, I might got me a man finally, because y'all, Ava can't get a man to save her life. Oh, Ava. But anyway, then we have Nina and Jack, and Nina is thanking him for, helping her after he made her accessory to attempted murder. And he was like, oh, no worries. And she's like, well, why did you do it? And he was like, oh, for Willow. She said, oh, you only did it for Willow? He was like, that's what I got to tell my superiors, because the real reason isn't appropriate. And she was like, well, what's the real reason? And he was like, because of you. And so then he asked her out on a date, and she's all happy, and they're going to go on the date. And I want to know, because Sonny had a real reaction to her dating him, the WSB agent, when she started dating him. And now his other ex-wife is dating that same WSB agent. I just find that, not that I think Sonny cares, but I just want to see what he has to say, because it's becoming a big pattern with Nina. I'm just saying. I digress. Anyway, so then we have Trina and Kai. They're at the pool and they're talking, and now they are considering telling Michael that they know definitively that Willow shot Drew, because they don't know which way to go. Like, they don't know, because they don't want the kids caught up in the middle. They don't want Wiley and Amelia caught up in the middle, because they are very toxic, both Drew and Willow, as we see today. The toxicity is not going anywhere. It's still there, present, more present than ever. It's just, those two are crazy. Like, bro, like, y'all need to chill. Like, Drew and Willow they take the cake for the most toxic couple, and that's saying a lot when Curtis and Portia well, see, this is why they take the cake, because Portia's not the toxic one in that relationship. That's Curtis. But in Willow and Drew, Willow is toxic and Drew is toxic, and they just clash. Anyway, I don't even have a mic on. I'm just going out here off vibes, y'all. But anyway, hopefully you can hear me. So then we have Alexis and Molly, and they're talking. And while they're talking, because they're talking about, postponing her book launch party. So while they're talking, they get a knock at the door, and the knock at the door is Willow. And Willow wants Alexis to handle her divorce. And she's like, yeah, I can't handle your divorce, because I did, handled all your stuff before on behalf of Drew. I can't, now that Drew is back up and walking, I can't handle your divorce. And she's like, because, I gotta put Scout first. And so she's a little dejected, but she understands, and she leaves. So then, her and Molly start talking about how crazy Willow is, because she's behaving very crazy, very weird, very odd. So they're talking about how crazy Willow is, and they get another knock at the door, and it's Drew and Martin. And Drew and Martin come in, and he's like, is Scout here? And she's like, no. And he was like, well, I'll wait. She said, wait for what? And he was like, yeah, I'm getting my daughter, because the restraining orders are still in place, and my boundaries were not respected while I was ill, blah blah blah. And she was like, well, Willow let her come over here. And he was like, well, me and Willow getting divorced, so blah blah blah. I'm like, yo, these people are crazy. So then Alexis just goes off on him, and like, they're going back and forth. And then while they're in the middle of them going back and forth, Scout comes home, and then he hugs her and tells her that they'll never be separated again. So back to the dungeon Scout goes, or so he thinks. So then we have Willow. She's back at her office, and she is, still contacting divorce attorneys. And Michael walks into her office, and he was like, oh, I'm rescinding the custody agreement because I don't want my kids near Drew. And she was like, you right. They shouldn't be around Drew. Me and Drew are getting divorced. I realize that he's not good for me or the kids. And so then she's talking to Michael, and she's like, oh, but I want to amend the custody arrangement. I want 50-50. She really fighting for 10%. And then so she's like, oh, you don't want to go to court with me. You don't want to go to court with me because this, and this. Willow, girl, you got a whole lot of dip on your chip. So Michael was like, you know what? Take me to court. Meanwhile, Drew and Martin, they went to the hospital, and they're in the hospital, and Felicia and Liz are there talking, and they're talking about setting him up for the device. And in walks Drew, and Liz is bewildered, because how the heck is he walking? Yeah, it's quite the question. She's like talking to Felicia like, you don't think this is weird? But Felicia was like, don't pry in his personal business. But I don't expect Liz to leave this alone because this is weird. And she finds out that they are getting a divorce too. But yeah, that was G8. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, July 30th, 2026. So we start this episode with Ethan and Ava. They're at the pool, and it's kind of like a continuation of their conversation in the hotel room where, they're discussing a potential relationship. I don't know what it is about saying Ava in a relationship that's just tickling to me, but it tickles me. But her and Ethan are discussing a relationship, and he's telling her, and she's like, the guy that I met when you came to Port Charles and seemed like he was interested in the relationship, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And he was like, yeah, I probably wasn't, but then I met you and here we are. Like, I could get used to this. He ain't say that, but something around along those lines, right? And so, they're talking and Ava is being coy, which is funny. We later find out when she speaks to Trina that it's because her last two relationships being Jen's, which I didn't really think they was in a relationship, but I digress. Jen's and Rick ended so horribly. So she's, a little gun shy. And I'm like, Ava, you a big grown woman. Why is you acting girly and I don't know. What girl? You too old for that. Respectfully. But anyway, so also while they're at the pool, Ethan goes over and he plays with baby Phoebe. And when he finished playing with baby Phoebe, he's, about to walk back over to Ava and he looks up and there's a man talking to one of the Metro Court employees. And I'm betting my bottom dollar that the man that is talking to one of the employees is likely Phoebe's father. Also, they're supposed to sign the paperwork tomorrow. I don't know if tomorrow is actually tomorrow on GH or if it is a continuation of today. I think it's a continuation of today. So something's probably going to pop off next week because they did say they had a game tonight and tomorrow they'll be in their uniforms for the game. So tomorrow is probably likely still this same day. But anyway, then we have BLQ and Chase. They're at the pool because, they like to bring Phoebe there. And then also, Michael works there in the Aurora offices. And he and Brooklyn were meeting to have a discussion about deception business, which turned out to not really be a discussion about deception business because he ended up telling her that Willow and Drew are getting a divorce, that Drew is back on his feet and he's walking and talking and able bodied again and they're getting a divorce. And so he's trying to warn her because you gotta watch out because, as we all know, Willow is Willow. And if Willow continues to Willow, she is going to make a move on Chase. And it's probably going to be successful. I want to take wagers at this point. How long until Willow and Chase are inappropriate with one another? Well, more inappropriate than they have already been being. And then Brooklyn does something that makes absolutely no sense, and I still haven't made sense of it to this moment. She goes back over to Chase and Phoebe, and she tells Chase that Willow is getting a divorce. Are you trying to send a man over there? And then he trying to play it off, and it's like, oh, it's none of my business. Okay, Chase, I don't buy nothing you selling, but I digress. Why would she tell him that? But anyway, meanwhile, at the Q's, Stella is there and she is talking with Tracy, and they're talking about Drew and him being able to come on the property. Then the conversation then turns to Curtis and the impending court case. And, Stella thinks he should just take the plea because she don't even know if she can go to court and just watch it because it's just too much. She's like, she doesn't know if she can go and like watch the trial. She just can't do something like that. Is because it's heartbreaking. And she's talking to Tracy about that. And I just wish he hadn't hit Isaiah because you didn't have to. Like Portia said, you're not a child. You just didn't have to hit him. Meanwhile, Felicia and Lucy are having lunch, and Lucy is ranting to Felicia about how Maxie left and sold her shares and whatever. But then Lucy also has a surprise for Felicia because Serena is back in town, and basically Serena ain't got no money, and Lucy wants Serena to help her with getting Deception back from the Quartermaines. Then we have Isaiah and Britt, and they're at the hospital, and they're talking because Isaiah is getting ready to take time off work to go to his trial. And he's talking to Britt because he wants to make Curtis pay, and he wants to nail him to the wall in court. And Britt was like, hey, let me give you some advice, which was sound advice. She was like, you might want to chill out on that when you go on the stand. And he was like, oh, I'm not going to act like this on the stand. But I wonder if he's going to be able to control himself. But then we have the Ashfords. It's Marshall. No, sorry. It starts off with Curtis and his two children. Oh my God, that is weird to say. Curtis, Desmond, and Trina. Portia, per Trina, is upstairs napping. And Curtis is like, he's good just to sit here with the both of them. And then there's a door. Somebody comes to the door. And she's like, you expected somebody? He said, why don't you answer the door and find out? And so she answers the door, and it's Marshall. And so they're just there and they're just happy. And then they start talking about Trina's recording contract. And Marshall tells her to get noise counseling um, headphones for when she go on tour. She said, I'm not on tour yet. He said, you will be. It's in your DNA. And Curtis is like, I wonder what Desmond's gift will be. And so, they're having family time and it's nice. And then Trina leaves because, as I stated, she ends up talking to Ava. She leaves and goes to the pool. But she leaves, and then Marshall and Curtis are there. And Curtis puts the baby in the bassinet because he's not going to spoil the baby either. The baby is napping, and they're talking about the impending trial. And Marshall gives him some food for thought. You might want to just take the 8 months than to risk losing more than the 8 months. And so, Curtis has a lot on his mind to consider. And then Stella comes over to the house, and she's like 3 generations of Ashford men, and they're just happy in one big happy family. And then Stella's like, come on, Marshall, let me make you something to eat. So they go in the kitchen because Stella about to make food, which makes sense to me. It's not awkward because I'm sure she would cook for Portia, especially with Portia being a new mom and everything. So cook for Marshall, Portia, and everybody else in the family. So yeah, and then Anna is having conversations with Peter, and then Jason comes over and she's asking him about Britt, and he's like, I don't think Britt had nothing to do with it. And then Peter telling her that he lying, and then he goes to the hospital and he sees the handler that brought him back to Port Charles working with Britt. That was GH for today, y'all. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, July 31st, 2026. So we started this episode at the park with Dante and Joe. You know, yesterday they discussed that they're going to go play softball today. So Dante and Joe are there because they're going to be playing for the PCPD. And Dante is trying to make it so that Corinthos Coffee does not win this year. So, they're talking and strategizing. And then they end up running into Elizabeth and Lucas, who are also at the park to play softball, playing on behalf of General Hospital. So they're talking, and Liz in sports, oil, and water. So, she's not, really that good with, you know, sports. So Dante was like, let me teach you a thing or two. And she was like, we on opposing teams. And he was like, well, don't tell nobody. So they go away and they are working on things that Elizabeth need to work on. Meanwhile, Joe and Lucas end up talking because they're going to be a budding thing, I think. I think the writing is on the wall there. So they're talking, and they're talking about how Lucas is looking for a place to live and all of that. And he is also looking for a place to live. So, they exchange information because, Lucas has been looking for a place to live. So he, shares what he's found so far with Joe. And, Joe asked a question. He asked Lucas, how long have Liz and Dante been together? And Lucas spit out his water because, yeah, they not together. And then he was like, well, maybe you seeing something that we all never saw before, because he would be the better partner, as opposed to who Liz is already seeing, i.e. Dante's uncle, Rick. Meanwhile, Dante is teaching Liz things, and she was like, I can never see the ball when it's in the air. And he was like, yeah, you got to use the glove to kind of track the ball and like block the sun. You got to hold it in the way. And she was like, well, then I get a hit in the head with the ball. And he was like, well, let me show you. So he's not doing anything forward with her, but to prying eyes, it can look like that. So while he's trying to show her how to shield her eye and catch the ball with the mitt, Rick is walking up and he's seeing the exchange, and he ain't liking what he's seeing. But your nephew is not trying to push up on your girl. That's not what happened. If they got a natural chemistry, that's one thing. But Dante is not like honestly trying to push up on Liz. I don't even think Dante is aware of what's happening, and that's on brand for Dante, because we think about him and Sam, they was kicking it, and I think everybody else was seeing it, but he didn't recognize it. So that's just how Dante is. He doesn't get it. Now, if Liz like him, I mean, at the end of the day, people like who they like, and you can't be mad at that as long as they're being honest and transparent. And as I stated, I don't think either one of them are cognizant of what's going on. They're just out, they enjoy talking to each other, they have built a great friendship, and that's what it is for right now. But Rick might make a big deal out of it, and being that Dante is Sonny's son, it could cause further rift between between Rick and Sunny. But anyway, so then we have Britt and Jason. Britt is supposed to be at the ball field now because she's the equipment manager, but she's still at work working with Tristan. But then Jason comes in and he basically tells Britt that Tristan was the guy who escorted him back from Jakarta, and that he has association with the WSB. He also tells her to play it cool and, kind of notice what she can and whatnot. No, that's not Britt's MO, and she don't listen to directives. So Britt goes and pages him and basically confronts him and says she will go to the board to tell them that he's WSB, and he's like, I'm not a WSB agent. They know that I worked at a WSB hospital, blah, blah, blah. And, she is trying to figure out what exactly is going on with Tristan, but she finds out nothing, and then she ends up being late to the field. Well, she was late anyway, but she was actually doing her job. So meanwhile, Carly and Valentine are at the Metro Court. He has set up a spread for her, and at first Carly is like, Valentine, I saw you order all this stuff to your room, the room I'm comping. And then she's like, and then you doing all of this. Like, bro, I'm paying for all of this because you ain't got no money. And then he tells her, I got my money back and I'm going to try and get Windermere back. And she was like, well, I told you already, I ain't spending the night there because you know how many people have died over there? Like, if anybody had any sense, they stay far away from Windermere. But I digress. And I just feel like Trouble and Valentine are on the cusp because then he's like, I should have asked for more. And they're like, she's like, why? He was like, because there's obviously something in there that Jack wanted and Nina wanted it too. I wonder what it is that Nina could have wanted. And like, bro, none of this has anything to do with you. Get you a place to live for you and your daughter and just shut up. Like, I don't know. And I like Carly and Valentine, but Valentine don't start getting on my nerves now. I'm just saying, don't start getting on my nerves. Meanwhile, at the pool, Brooklyn is still there with Phoebe, and Ava is there. And Ava is, still getting a tan or whatever. And Drew walks up and she's like, hey, Drew, it's good to see you. And he was like, you might be the only one. And so they get to chatting, and she was like, well, you can't sit there. You have to move when Ethan come back. But then she looked and Ethan is gone. And she like, what? Because Ethan is hiding from the guy that I believe is Phoebe's father. So Ethan leaves and he actually goes to Lulu and he's leaving town. So I don't know if he's leaving town for good or what is going up, but he's leaving. And so Drew and Ava were talking, and then when they finished talking, because he asked her, did you know what Nina and Willow were doing? And she was like, what you mean? But he didn't tell her, but he was trying to see what she knew. And yeah, so she gonna have to go talk to her bestie. Meanwhile, Danny tries to take Drew his sweet tea and he spills it on him. And Drew explodes. Brooklyn jumps up and is like, don't talk to him like that. And they get into it. And then he tells her, because Drew was sitting there in that chair for months, not able to say anything, but he was able to hear and observe a lot. And one of the things he was able to hear and observe was that Willow definitely has a thing for Chase. And he was like, Willow will stop at nothing to get what she wants. You better worry about that. And I'm like, you better worry about that because Willow is a problem. And I'm sorry if you don't want to believe that, Brooklyn, but he is. Meanwhile, Anna's still talking to herself, child. She being there talking to Peter August, and Emma almost caught her today. And child, Poe Anna. They trying to convince her that Jason is a liar. But then she goes to the Metro Court and sees Valentine and Carly kissing. So now she is gonna probably be ramped up. But that was General Hospital for the day. Have a great weekend.